This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Internet 2. In this class, we'll be continuing our overview and discussion of the Microsoft Edge browser, and we'll also talk about evaluating websites. Okay, in Internet 1, we talked about I introduced you to the Edge browser a bit. We talked about the tools and the toolbar. We talked about browsing websites generally. We talked about searching for websites and information using search engines. So we're going to kind of build upon those skills, talk more about evaluating the information we find. All right, some good criteria to follow to make sure we're getting the best information on the internet. And then I'm going to walk you through some more tools that you could use to kind of keep track of your search, your research, and just become a better user of your browser overall. Okay. And again, in this class, we are using the Microsoft Edge browser primarily, since this is one of the more popular browsers out there, as it does come with your Windows computer. So many people just use Edge because it's the first one they see, the first one they begin using. But remember, other web browsers operate very much the same way. So if you are a Google Chrome user, if you like Firefox, or even if you have a Mac and you use Safari, you'll find that whatever you learn in Edge here can be easily applied to those other browsers. They all work very much the same way and have a lot of the same tools and settings. So what I'd like to do first is do a bit of a review of what we talked about in Internet 1. We'll talk about what we're going to do today, and then we're going to jump into the Edge browser. So in Internet 1, we talked about that term browser, okay, which is the software that lets you view, retrieve, and send information over the internet. So essentially, you need a web browser installed on your computer or smartphone, whatever device you're using, in order to get access to the internet, okay? Some of the popular browsers out there are listed right here: Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, and again, if you're a Mac user or an iPhone user, you are likely using Safari. Though, even with a Mac, you can download, install, and use these other browsers. Now, once we get onto our browser and we start looking at a website of some kind, remember that we use links on those websites to jump from one page to another, okay? One website is made up of several web pages, so we use links to get from page to page in that site, or in some cases, to another site entirely, okay? Remember that links, we tend to think of them as those kind of that blue font that's often underlined, okay? They still often look like that, but they can come in other shapes and sizes. They could be pictures or videos, okay? They could kind of trigger other menus like drop-down menus, flyout menus, etc., which will then lead to other links, okay? And remember the telltale signs for a link. If you're not sure what you're pointing at is a link, some of the telltale signs are when your mouse pointer turns into a pointed finger. Okay, it's a good sign that you are pointing at a link. Also remember that you get that web address preview in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. We looked at that in Internet 1. All right, that little preview will tell you not only that it's a link, but perhaps more importantly, that when you click on that link, where it's going to take you. All right, I just kind of mentioned this, but we'll go over it again. So when we are using the internet, when we're browsing the World Wide Web, we are browsing different websites. Now, one website is made up of several web pages, much like pages in a book, okay? So in Internet 1, we use the example of mcl.org, which is our library website, and we said that all the other parts of the website, pages about our services, pages about our individual branches, all right, about our databases, etc. They're all divided into different web pages. So when we click on a link of some kind, we're taken to one of those pages directly to get that piece of information. All right, and the home page, okay, it can refer to a couple things. Sometimes it refers to the first page of a website. So when we first log on to that main web address, again, mcl.org is an example, the first page we see, we would call it the website's homepage. The homepage can also refer to the first page you see, or I shouldn't say the first page you see, but a page that is set to be displayed every time you first use your browser, which could be the first page you see or a page that you can go to at any time through your home button. Something we looked at last week in Internet 1. We will look at that again today just to quickly review it. All right, in Internet 1, I also introduced you to search engines, okay? It is an automated program or website that enables you to search using one or more keywords, and then it returns a list of websites in which those keywords are found. And here are three very popular examples right here that many people use every day: Google, Microsoft Bing, and Yahoo. Okay, so remember, we use search engines in some cases when we don't know the website in which the information is located. Okay, we might be looking for a specific website, but we just can't quite remember the address, so we can use a search engine for that. Okay, or if we're just looking for information generally and we don't care so much about what website it comes from, again, we use a search engine for that. Okay, we just type in our keywords and we select whatever websites seem to convey or articulate that information best, is how we generally do things. And remember, search engines, when they return results, they will return them in order of relevance. All right, so the results you see towards the top of the list are typically the most relevant to your search terms, and then they get less and less relevant as the results go on. Search engines are very sophisticated, especially nowadays, so they're very good at locating the information you need quickly and efficiently and accurately. So today we're going to talk more about evaluating websites. So let's say we go onto a search engine, we type in some search terms, we get a whole bunch of results. So now the question is, which one should I go with? Okay, there might be, there are likely going to be several different websites that discuss and make sense of the information you're looking for. All right, you don't have to stick to just one, of course. In some cases, you might want to compile a few if you're doing some research. All right, but what we're going to talk about is what we look at on those websites in order to maybe choose some of the better ones. All right, and that's going to also include, of course, practicing searching. We're going to practice searching, and in that process, evaluate the websites we find. All right, we're going to talk about customizing tabs and windows. So if we are doing some searching, if we're doing some, let's call it research, kind of some very purposeful searching, okay, where it's not just kind of a quick thing. We're looking for information. We want to keep digging through that information, compile some websites, etc. All right, I'm going to show you how to customize your tabs and windows to kind of ease the process of keeping track of all your different websites, web pages, etc. All right, and eventually we will explore some more settings in Edge. All right, last week we did go through the main toolbar in Edge, but today we'll go through some more in that main settings list, or that more options list, to again kind of show you ways to keep track of your browsing history, maybe save some things for later use, maybe even delete some things from your history in case you want to just clear some things out. Okay, and a little bit later, we will very quickly dive into Google Chrome and Firefox as well. We won't spend a whole lot of time in these browsers. I just want to show you, however, that the essential layout and tools that are the layout and tools that are offered. Let me say that again. Excuse me. The layout of and the tools offered in these browsers are very much the same as Microsoft Edge. All right. So let's actually, before we start talking about evaluating a website, let's jump into Edge here, and then we'll circle back to this. All right, so I'm going to go down my taskbar. Let me actually close this. I think I have something open there. Okay, so for those of you in person, if you want to follow along, you can. Otherwise, you could just watch up front. And for those of you attending virtually, if you want to go ahead and launch your Edge browser from whatever access point you want, that's totally fine. I'm going to launch it from my Windows 10 taskbar down here, like this. And remember, if you don't have an access point in your taskbar and you're using a Windows computer, you will certainly see it in your main start menu. Just scroll down to M for Microsoft and you'll see Microsoft Edge here. All right, so we're back to our library website, just like we were looking at in Internet 1. So right now in my Edge browser, remember we would call this the start page. I have the Mercer County Library System website, mcl.org, saved as my start page in my browser. All browsers allow you to do this. You can save a start page so that every time you open your browser, it's the first page it goes to. Now, depending on the browser, a start page and a home page are the same thing. Okay, but here in Edge, if you remember, a start page and a home page are two different things. We have our start page, the first page we come to when we open our browser. Our home page is something else we can set up, which acts as kind of a home base. Okay, if we add the home button to our browser toolbar, which we'll do in a few minutes, it allows us to go to a certain website whenever we want to. Okay, so instead of coming to it automatically when we open the browser, we can go to that web page at any time by using the home button, and that would be a home page in that case. So again, this is our start page. We could also set up a home page, which we will do in a few minutes to review that. Now, we're looking at our start page. Let's remember, at the top, you have your toolbar. Oh, there it is. Let me change that color so we can see it a little bit better. I'll change it to yellow for now. All right, so at the top of that page, we have our toolbar in Edge here, which gives us access to a whole bunch of different tools we could use to manage our browser or browsing session. All right, remember, whenever we open up our browser and start looking at websites, we call that a browsing session. And then we close it, we might reopen it later. Now we're starting a new browser session. All right, so these tools allow us to manage our browser session. All right, in the middle of that toolbar, we have our address bar or URL bar. Remember, URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator, and that's, or just what's more generally called a web address. And that's the unique address a website has. Once we type it in, it takes us directly to that website. All right, so in the case of the library website here, the web address is www.mcl.org. Okay, now you'll notice up there, if you can see, it's a little bit small, but there's no www. That's because, like I explained in Internet 1, we often don't need to put in that prefix, okay? The browser just assumes that essentially and doesn't require it. So it's in some cases, just to be safe, just enter it anyway. But in this case with the library website, it is not required, so it's not part of the start page address. But either way, even if I did type it in, it would still come to the same website. And remember, the HTTPS that's at the very beginning, that prefix, that stands for the hypertext protocol, or hypertext transfer protocol, excuse me. It's just, again, something we don't need to type in ourselves. The browser will do that for you. Just has something to do with the sort of the language it's using for its for the websites. Okay, and when you see the S there after HTTP, that stands for secure. When you see the S, you will also see a lock to the left there. That's, if you look at the padlock, it is locked, which just means that this has a web certificate. It is secure. Okay, any information we put into the site, it's private. It's not given to anyone, not sold to anyone, nothing like that. It is a secure website. All right, now speaking of mcl.org, let's just look at the page itself, and we'll go back to the toolbar in a minute. So this is the page right here. Once we type in mcl.org, it leads right here to the home page of the Mercer County Library System website. So in this case, this is another instance of a home page, but a different kind of home page. In this case, the home page is referring to the first page we see of a website. Okay, almost to give it as a table of contents for the rest of the website. That's typically what home pages do. They will include some kind of menu like this, and that menu will contain links that link you to other pages of the website, which we explored in Internet 1 a bit. We don't need to do it again here. Just remember that when you point at links, the telltale signs, like I said before, we get a pointed finger for our cursor, and perhaps most importantly, that website preview in the bottom left corner of the screen. If you look down above my start menu button, above the taskbar, there is that web preview or that website preview. Okay, it tells you not only that this is a link, but it tells you where the link is going to take you if you click on it. All right, so looking at that, I can see that this is going to keep me on the same website, mcl.org, but I can see that there's an extension after it. All right, I'll click on this real quick so you can see that extension. All right, if you look up there in the URL bar, you'll see everything after mcl.org, okay, that / and everything after, that's the extension. Remember that individual pages of a website have an extension, much like a phone extension. If we put in a phone extension number, it takes us to that person directly. Okay, a web page extension does the same thing. If I type in this extension exactly as it's shown, it will take me directly to this page, and I can bypass the home page entirely if I need to. All right, now I'll use, so with all of that said, and remember, there are several other links scattered throughout these pages. As we scroll down, we'll see some blue font, which often indicates a link. You might see some pictures. In this case, these are acting as links as well. And remember, just look for the pointed finger and look for the web preview in the bottom left. Okay, now let's go back up to the toolbar and just quickly review some of these main tools. Okay, we're not going to go into in depth because we did review them in Internet 1. On the very left side, I have my back button. So I'm going to actually use this right now to go back one page in my browser session. Okay, remember, think of your browser session as reading a book. Okay, you start on one page and you start flipping through the pages left to right. Even if you're going through new websites, okay, you're still just flipping through one big book. If you want to go back one page, 2 pages, 3 pages, you use your back button to do so. One click goes back one page, 2 clicks goes back 2 pages, etc., until you reach where you started with your browser session. All right, and then we have the forward button, which of course is just the opposite direction. So if you go back a certain number of pages, now you want to go the other way, forward to where you left off, to where you, the furthest point you got, okay, you would use the forward button, just like the back button, to go in the opposite direction. Next over is the refresh button. In some browsers, they call this the reload button. It's the same thing. It just updates the page you're looking at. All right, sometimes when we are looking at a page, new information is being added to that page. All right, we looked at an example where we registered for something. All right, but after we registered, it still didn't show that, it said 30 people allowed, we registered, but it still showed 30 people. Once we refreshed, it dropped it down to 29 people because it updated with our registration. Okay, so when we refresh, it's just going to update the page to show the latest information or changes that have been added to that web page. All right, also something we sometimes use with something like a news website. Okay, where new stories are being added, we might have to refresh to see the latest stories that have been added since we last accessed that page. Okay, now going over to the right of the address bar, remember in the address bar itself, you will sometimes find some tools there depending on the website, okay, such as send this page, which just allows us to send this to somebody in our, it allows us to send this to one of our other devices if we've synced our devices to our Microsoft account. I talked about that in Internet 1 a little bit. Okay, if you have other devices at home, like a tablet, smartphone, and they're all signed into the same Microsoft account and they all have the Edge browser, okay, you can sync all those devices so that you can pass information back and forth between them. All right, next over is the QR code. It just creates a QR code for the page. Again, something you would probably use if you're going to send this to yourself on a smartphone, so you can just quickly tap on the QR code and be taken directly to that site without having to enter it manually. And then we have the add this page to favorites. We talked about favorites in Internet 1. We said that the Microsoft Edge browser allows you to save specific web addresses to your favorites list. It's like a speed dial, okay? Very helpful for web pages when you have long extensions that you can't memorize or that you don't want to write down. Okay, you could just save them as a favorite to your favorites list, and it acts as a speed dial. You simply open the favorites list to get back to one of those pages. Okay, so after you've added it to your favorites, how do we get to the favorites list? Well, that's the next icon over, the star with the 3 lines. All right, I'll click on it real quick to remind you of what it looks like here. Okay, so your favorites list in Edge is going to have your favorites bar, which is basically just kind of your main section for all of your favorites. Other favorites is something else related to earlier versions of Edge. Okay, but here, pretty much everything is placed under the favorites bar. And remember, you can create your own folders in your favorites bar if you want to organize things a little better, much like creating folders in the Windows or Mac operating system to manage your files. Same exact thing. We could just use the add folder icon up here at the top to create a new folder, call that folder whatever we want, maybe MCLS for the Mercer County Library System. Okay, and then when I go to add this web page, I could choose that folder and click done. And now it's saved in that folder in my favorites list. There's the folder, I click on the folder, and there is the website I just saved. So if I click on it, I'll be taken directly back to that site. And remember, when you do add a favorite, you'll remember because the star there will be filled in a blue color. If you forget that you've added it before, just look for that star and it will tell you if it's already part of your favorites list. Okay, next to the favorites list, and by the way, remember, other browsers support the same function. Okay, Firefox and Chrome, they call them bookmarks, but it's the same thing, same process, just a different name. Next over is collections. Now this is a little more unique to Edge here, or at least this version of Edge. Okay, remember we looked at this last week. In fact, I saved my collection. It's a bit more versatile than your favorites list. You can add not only web addresses, but you can add pictures from websites or a web page, and you can add selected portions of text from that web page. Okay, again, we went over that in Internet 1, so if you want to review how to do that, I encourage you to check out that video on our YouTube channel. All right, actually, and now that I'm thinking about it, we will circle back to collections a little bit later, so we will kind of review it again a little bit later. In fact, I'm going to just delete this before I forget because I don't really need it right now. There we go. All right, next to collections is your profile icon. All right, again, if you're signed into your Microsoft account, it would be indicated here. And also, this is where you would go to sync to turn on sync for this device. And then if you have other devices which are signed into your Microsoft account, they have the Edge browser installed, you can turn the sync on those devices, and then you essentially just, all the devices will be added to each other's respective lists, and then you could share information back and forth. Now, to the right of the profile icon is the three dots, which is, or we sometimes call that a meatball menu, okay? It's just one of the universal icons for more options. When you see three dots, whether horizontally or vertically, typically that means more options, which is just what we get right here. And we will revisit some of these a little bit later. Okay, excuse me. Yeah, we're going to go over some of these in more depth a little bit later. All right. In fact, I'm going to go back to some more options because the first thing I'd like to do is I want to add a home page. I want to review how we do that, and then we're going to talk about searching and evaluating websites. So what I'd like to do is my start page is set to the library website, but I want to also set a home page here in Edge, which remember acts as a kind of home base, something I can go back to at any time in my browser session. So to do that, let's all go to our more options icon. And let's go down to settings toward the bottom there. Okay. When you click on settings, it's actually going to open up as a separate tab in your browser. All right, so these are all the main settings, the kind of behind the scenes settings for the Edge browser. Okay. And in fact, this is kind of another lesson. Remember that when we are in a browser session, okay, we can organize different web pages and websites in different tabs, which is what this is doing right now. So that allows me to look at multiple websites at the same time in one window, rather than having to open up a new Edge window and have two separate windows that I have to move back and forth, like so if I had another one, okay, which it just makes it a bit more unwieldy. All right, having it like this, we have one window we can work with, and each page is separated by a different tab. So, and we will revisit that discussion a little bit later when I show you how to open things as tabs, if you ever want to do so, okay, to make sure that it's opening as a new tab rather than a new window, which can happen. So let's come back to our settings here. So we're on the settings page. Remember, on the left side, we have all the different settings available to us in Edge. We want to set up a home page, so we're going to go right down to the fourth category that says Start Home and New Tabs and click on it. Now, if we wanted to set up a new start page, remember that's controlled by this first section that says when Edge starts, okay? To set up a specific web page to open up, you would make sure open these pages is filled in here. And then if nothing is already added, it would look like this, where it says add a new page. You would click on it, type in the URL, www.mcl.org, and then click add. Okay, and remember, you can excuse me, I lost my train of thought for a second. You can add more start pages. So if you open up a new Edge window, it will open up to that other start page, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so that's a start page. Now, underneath of that is the home page. Now, in order to add a home page, you should first add your home button, because that's going to be your access to your home page. So the first thing it tells us is show home button on the toolbar. We want to make sure that's turned on. So let's go over to the right and click that switch to turn it on. Now we set the home page. We could either have it set as a new tab page. Remember what that looked like in Internet 1. All right, if it's a new tab page, that means that it's just going to be that new tab page we see in Edge, essentially just a big collection of different news stories, headlines, weather, local weather information, sports scores, all that kinds of stuff. All right, kind of just a big news page. But if we wanted to set our homepage to a specific website, we're going to make sure that the second button is filled in, which it is. And then where it says enter your URL, we're going to click into that box. We're going to type in www.google.com. And then for this one, you have to make sure you manually save it. On the right side, click on save. All right, so now that we've saved it, we can leave our settings for now. Let's go up to the settings tab. Okay, in that setting, remember we have two tabs open right now, the Mercer County Library System homepage and our Edge settings. So to close the Edge settings, just click on the X in that one tab and you'll be back to just this one tab, just this one website. Now, if you look up in the toolbar, the home button we added is right next to the refresh button here on the left, where I'm circling. So if we click on that, go ahead and click on it, it will take us to Google.com. And that is our home page. We can go back to this specific site at any time in our browser session. Okay, so now we're on Google.com. So let's do some searching, and then we'll talk about evaluating websites along the way. So sometimes when we do some internet searching, it's kind of more for leisure, for fun. We're just looking up some information on the fly real quick, okay? But sometimes we do more purposeful searching. We want to make sure we're not just getting information, but accurate, reliable information, okay? Because the internet's full of lots of different information. We want to make sure we're getting it from a good resource, okay? So we'll do a couple different searches today. The first one, we're going to pretend we're looking for health-related information, which is, of course, something that we want to make sure is accurate, up to date, etc. So in our Google search bar, we're going to be searching for ear infection symptoms. So I'm going to type in ear infection. And remember that when you use these search engines, whether it's Google, Yahoo, Bing, or whatever, as you type your keywords, you will get a list of auto-filled search terms. Okay, in this case, Google's just kind of looking at what other people have generally searched for using some of these search terms, and it fills in the blanks for you in case one of these matches what we're looking for. Okay, so in fact, the second one down says ear infection symptoms. So instead of having to continue typing in the rest, I could just click on it and it will take me and it will just fill it in and then run the search. All right, so we get our list of results here. Now, as you can see, like I said before, search engines have come a long way. They get more and more sophisticated as time goes on. So we don't just have a simple results page here. Google is actually giving us kind of a, it's pretty much a pasted snippet from a website embedded right on the results page itself. And if I look down there, it does say sources Mayo Clinic. That's where they pulled this from. Okay, so in other words, instead of having to go to the Mayo Clinic page necessarily, it's just right here on the actual results page. So I could just look at it right here. Okay, kind of, and they're doing something similar on the left here, also pulled from Mayo Clinic. They just list the actual symptoms here. So if I'm happy with that, okay, that's all the information I need. I don't even have to necessarily go to the website. It's just right there on the Google results page itself. Okay, and another thing they often do now, these search engines, again, in addition to the actual results, they might give you images related to your search embedded right in the results list. And in many cases, if it's something that can be localized, like you're looking for a practitioner, something along those lines, they will give you a map also embedded on the results page that shows you doctors and other specialists in your area. Okay, so again, these search engines nowadays, they often don't just give you a pure results list. They're going to give you maps and other sort of related information. Okay, things that can kind of enhance your search. So with all that said, let's look at the results that we've gotten. So the first one, remember how search results are typically organized. You will get the you'll get the web address itself. In the blue font is the link to that page, and then usually some kind of snippet or description, a snippet from or a description of that page will be located underneath. In this case, they've put it above. It just has to do with the way that this result was formatted for the results page. Otherwise, like you see, the other ones are kind of standard. Website at the top, link in the middle, and then a description underneath. So those are our results. Now, we have several results here dealing with ear infection symptoms. So the question is, which ones should I visit? Which ones should I consult? So with that said, let me talk about evaluating websites for a second, and then we're going to come back to this results page. So for those of you here, just stay right here. I'm going to go to my PowerPoint, and then I'm going to circle back to this. Oops, clicked on the wrong page. There we go. Okay, so evaluating websites. So like I said, we have all these results. Which one or which ones, plural, should we look at? Well, we should be looking at some criteria. Okay, that's how we should judge the information on the site. So there are 4 general criteria by which we should judge a website or web page's information to ensure that it's accurate, reliable, up to date. The first of which is authority. All right. Authority, of course, the root of that word is author. Okay, so authority kind of looks at who wrote the information, who put it together. Okay, in some cases, who reviewed it. Okay, medical information especially should always be continually reviewed to make sure it's accurate. So who wrote it, maybe who reviewed it, what are their credentials? Okay, do they have the expertise required to give you this kind of information? All right, and maybe do they provide other pieces of information, their email address, their phone number, a profile about themselves, so you can learn more about the specific author. Okay, in many cases, the more transparency you get about the author or maybe authors, plural, about of a specific article or web page, the more transparency you get, the better, because they're just letting you know who they are, their credentials, and they're not trying to hide anything. Okay. Also, in terms of authority, we should be looking at the domain of the website. We talked about this in Internet 1 a bit. Remember, we talked about domains. When you type in a web address, the last part of that web address is .something, .com, .org for .org, .gov or .gov, okay, .edu. So generally speaking, we want to look for preferred domains when we're looking for authoritative information, okay? So usually we stay away from .coms. Again, it's not to say that .coms are necessarily going to give you false or inaccurate information. Okay, but there is a chance that they could. Well, the chances are better or more or likelier that they will give you not the best information if it's a .com. And also, as we're going to see, .coms just have a lot of distractions sometimes. So even just from a kind of efficiency standpoint, .coms are just not the best websites to use when you're looking for authoritative information. And we'll see an example of that in a few minutes what I'm talking about in terms of distractions, okay? So we generally want to stick to .edus, which are academic institutions that host the information, .govs, which are government agencies that host the information. .orgs are often good as well, but sometimes we want to be careful with those too. Okay, but .orgs are often nonprofits, which means they don't necessarily have any kind of agenda. They're not reliant on any kind of revenue, ad revenue. So that's in many cases, a .org would be a preferred domain as well, just like .edus and .govs. Now, another criterion we want to look at is objectivity, which kind of has to do with what we just discussed. Okay, all of these things are really all wrapped up and they're all related to each other. Okay, so objectivity, we want to make sure that the website is not just advertisement disguised as information. Okay, as we saw in Internet 1, oftentimes a link, okay, or an ad of some kind, well, I shouldn't say an ad, but a piece of information on a website or a link, it could be an ad. It doesn't look like an ad, it doesn't sound like an ad, but it is. So we just want to make sure that we're looking at actual objective information and not something that's trying to sway us or in a certain direction or sell us some kind of product of some kind. Okay. Now, another criterion is currency. This one's pretty simple. We want to make sure that the information is up to date. So again, something like health and medical information, we want to always make sure that it's up to date because this kind of information is always reviewed. It's continually studied. So we want to make sure that the information is reviewed and updated in case there have been any changes in our understanding of that particular topic, or if they're just maybe correcting some old inaccuracies. Okay, so a good website or web page will have a timestamp letting you know when it was written, and even better, when it was last reviewed. And also, when you may have encountered dead links on a website before. When you click on a link and then it just takes you to an error page. That's also something you want to look for, because if it has a lot of dead links, that means that web page is not reviewed often. It's just kind of sitting there. So that's just another indication that whoever put this information together is not really looking over it. Okay, so we want to stick to something that's always updated and functional. Last but not least, our fourth and final criterion for evaluating a website is coverage. All right, is the information presented detailed, comprehensive, and free? Okay, so generally speaking, the more comprehensive or detailed the information is, the likelier it is that this is coming from a good source. Okay, in fact, I've seen actual examples of this where it's a website that gives you medical information, but it's very limited. And in some cases, you could even tell that they're just pasting from other websites. They might just have a lot of quotations. They're just borrowing from other websites and putting it all together on their own page. Okay, that's not somebody who's vetting resources. That's not somebody who's really an expert. They're just putting stuff together for you. And they might not have a lot of authority over the actual subject matter. So you want to be careful with things like that. So generally speaking, the more detailed and comprehensive it is, the likelier it is that the person putting it together has expertise. They have authority. Okay, and paywalls too. If you hit a lot of paywalls, you read a little snippet, right, and then it says click here for more information. You click there, it sounds great, and then all of a sudden it says, sign up for more information, something along those lines. Sign up for our membership, sign up for our site. .govs, .edus, their information is going to be free, generally speaking. So when you hit paywalls, that's typically a sign that you're dealing with a commercial website, and just not something you really need to bother with. Okay, there is accurate, authoritative information out there, believe me, that requires no fee. So, with all that said, let's look at a couple examples and look at these criteria. So I'm going to leave our slide here and go back to Edge. All right, so I'm going to scroll down a bit. Okay, now the first one is from mayoclinic.org. All right, .org, like I said, is usually a preferred domain. And if you're familiar with Mayo Clinic, they are a very reputable organization, and they run a very reputable site. Okay, it's a medical organization, basically a network of hospitals and other offices, but they're known for disseminating a lot of information for consumers and patients, okay, freely on their site. And it's all vetted, it's written by medical professionals. So Mayo Clinic, I already know this is a great site, but let's bypass that one for now. I'm going to look for one that people often use, which is okay. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we have webmd.com, okay? So WebMD is very popular. All right, WebMD, if you're not familiar, is a website that covers a variety of health topics, okay? And it's showing up as one of the first results because it is so popular. That's why it's towards the top of the pile here. But it is a .com, so I might want to exercise a little bit of caution. So let's click on that link and look at the symptoms of an ear infection on the WebMD website. All right, now again, just a little disclaimer here. The point, I'm not saying that .coms are necessarily bad. They're not going to hurt you. They're not going to hurt your computer, nothing like that. In fact, by all accounts, the information on WebMD is usually quite accurate. Okay, I did my own research prior to this class just to make sure. It is fact-checked by other experts in the field outside of WebMD, but there are some other things that might not make this the best resource. So we'll kind of look at we'll kind of look at those things as we go through. Okay, so right off the bat, we do see understanding ear infection symptoms. So we have a web page here dedicated to symptoms of ear infections. And right underneath of that, we do see medically reviewed by name MD on April 3rd, 2021. All right, let me go back to my red pen so we can see it a little bit better. Okay, so right off the bat, in terms of authority, this is a good thing. It tells us the author. And by looking at this, okay, I might want to dig a little deeper, but they do have an MD attached to their name, which means they are likely not only just an author, but a medical professional, right? An expert on this subject. You also notice that that is a link. It's in blue. So that would, if you look at the website preview in the bottom left, it looks like what WebMD does is they link you. Each author acts, their name also acts as a link to their profile if you want to learn more about that author. Again, transparency, that's a good thing. Okay, so they're not, they're giving us more than just their name. They're giving us more information about that specific author, but we don't need to go there just yet. Next to that is the date, okay? This was reviewed on April 3rd, 2021. So, almost a year old, but I would venture to guess that that's still, I would still consider that current, right? It's good that it was reviewed within the last year to make sure that all this information is still accurate. Now, as we scroll down this particular article or this particular page, there's a lot of stuff here, okay? We get this kind of rotating video, which might be a bit distracting, okay? again, it looks like it's sticking to it is technically relevant, okay, but actually this one, oh, well, there's an advertisement. That one's obvious. Okay, so some of these are advertisements. Some of them are relevant to our information. So we might, again, it's just kind of distracting. We don't want to accidentally click on it and deal with that kind of, and get off track, right? So already we're seeing that WebMD is packed with a lot of different links and other ads that might detract from the information. We have a banner at the top here. On the right side, we have a CVS advertisement. Okay. Now I'm going to keep scrolling. Okay, so this one on the right says ad. That one's pretty obvious. I'm going to keep scrolling now. What we're finding is here's the actual article itself, symptoms of an ear infection. Okay, some of these things are hyperlinked probably to more detailed information about that symptom. Okay, here we have an ad kind of thrown in the middle. Of course, some ads on the right side. Ads are pretty much following us all the way down. Now I want to see. Okay, these are all legitimate pages. How do I know these are just regular web pages on WebMD? Because if I look at the web preview, it shows me the address right there. Now sometimes, let me refresh this real quick. See, in fact, there's so much information here that it's not loading too great. Let me try one more time. I'm going to refresh. You see, these top picks are not loading for me. Oh, there we go. I just had to do a little click there. All right, so I'm going to scroll down to the bottom real quick, and then we're going to scroll back up a little bit. I just want to show you that under top picks, okay, some of this stuff sounds relevant. Why kids get ear infections? Why do my ears itch? Okay, they sound like articles related to the information we searched for. However, if you point at them, look at the preview. Remember I talked about clickbait in Internet 1. Look at the preview. It says add click. Okay, so this is actually just, these are sponsored links, and they lead to advertisements for something, a product likely, okay, or maybe some other kind of website. So again, you just want to be careful with these sponsored links because they're kind of disguised as articles or links to articles, but they're really just advertisements. All right, now as I scroll up, I'm looking under the article. It does have a show sources drop down. This is another thing to look for. This is a good thing to look for in terms of, well, really kind of everything, but authority and coverage especially. When we talked about how comprehensive the information is, a good indication of how comprehensive it is, other than just reading the article itself, is to see what information they pulled from in order to produce this article. So if I click on show sources, it will show me the actual organizations from which they pulled this information and put it together. Okay, and if I scroll back up a little bit, you'll see that they have this symptoms page for WebMD. It's just part of other ear infection pages. Symptoms is just one of those pages. We have prevention, treatments, etc. So if I go to another page in this same ear infection section of their website, such as prevention here, all right, I'll get a different article about prevention. It's still a different author, but it's reviewed by that author, and there's the date in which it was last reviewed. And if I scroll down for this one and go to sources, it will give me different sources because this is a different article. All right, now, last but not least, another great thing to always remember when you're looking at when you're trying to evaluate a website for, again, authority, objectivity, currency, and coverage. Always look for an about page, which is typically going to be found at the bottom of the page. Okay, so if I come all the way down, you'll find some general information about WebMD. Okay, about basically kind of the website itself. You always want to look for an about page, which they do have right here, about. And under that About section is a page called About WebMD. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Okay, so this is a great resource to consult on really any website. You can even do this first, just to get an idea of who they are, what their mission is, their policies, advertising policies. Okay, again, the more transparent they are about these things, the better, when they kind of lay all these things out for you. And you'll see that WebMD does a pretty good job of that. On the left side, who we are, okay, meet the doctors with links to their profiles, senior editorial staff. Okay, and remember, with the individual articles, we could have clicked on the links there as well for each author. Okay, so not everybody's listed here. Presumably, these are doctors that work for at WebMD specifically. Other ones might kind of act as consultants, okay, for the website. On the left side, we see an advertising policy. So if you want to get information about their advertising, it's all right here. So an About page, a great resource to consult on a website to see, again, who hosts the website, who's running it, who's putting the information together, what their mission is, and what their policies are. All right, if a website doesn't even have an About page, I would probably just stay away from that site, honestly. Okay, because every good website should have an About page or an About Us page. All right, so with all that said, let's go back to the Google results real quick. To do that, I'll just go up to my back button in my browser and click it a few times until I'm back to that Google results page. All right, but just to review with WebMD here, authority, we did see the authors are listed and there's more information about them, which is a good thing, and they are they're licensed medical professionals in this case, so they are experts. Objectivity, that's the only one that's kind of up for grabs here. Okay, currency, we did see the dates next to the reviews, which is good. All right, everything seems pretty current. And coverage, all right, we get some good information here. Several other pieces of related information are given separate pages, so there's a lot of coverage, and we did see the list of sources consulted for these pages. So again, objectivity, okay, that one could maybe be debated a little bit since we do have a lot of advertisements. And generally speaking anyway, the advertisements are just plain distracting. So if you want kind of a more focused experience when you're reviewing information like this, that's in that kind of case, you'll probably want to stick to a .edu, a .gov, or a .org. So with all that said, I'm going to go back one more time to the results page. And this time I'm going to scroll up and use that Mayo Clinic link, the very first one that popped up here, that says an ear infection, middle ear, symptoms and causes. All right, so now we're on the Mayo Clinic page. In this case, another page or section of a website dealing with ear infections. And it's kind of like WebMD where we see it's divided into different kind of subcategories, symptoms and causes, diagnosis and treatment, doctors and departments. Okay. Now, as I scroll down, notice we don't quite have quite as many links. Now, there are some advertisements. Now, this is a .org, so you might be thinking, why are there ads? Well, sometimes these nonprofits, they still use some, they like to generate a little bit of ad revenue, but not so much maybe to make a profit or put in their pockets. We'll talk about that in a second. But generally speaking, we see definitely fewer ads than we saw with WebMD. As I scroll down, we have an overview. We have symptoms listed here. Okay, causes. So in this case, everything's kind of on one page. Okay. Now, there's just kind of a general byline here by Mayo Clinic staff, but it is a link. So presumably, if I click on that, it's going to tell me more about the people who wrote this. All right, so we'll kind of see that in a second when we go to the About page, because that's what it's going to link us to, their About page. In fact, if you look at the web preview down at the bottom, it does say mayoclinic.org/about this site. So it tells me that it's going to take me to their About page. But we'll come back to that in a second. Now down below, we do have, in terms of currency, it is timestamped. Okay, June 23rd, 2021. So good currency, and we have another, instead of show sources, this says show references. Now, what I like about Mayo Clinic, we do have more references here than we saw with WebMD, but remember, WebMD was dividing them amongst each page, whereas everything is just, Mayo Clinic's just putting everything in one list here for all of their pages dealing with ear infections. But they're much more specific about the actual papers and studies from which they're drawing their research and the actual article itself. Okay, so I think in terms of coverage, Mayo Clinic's handling this a little better, because they're giving us detailed information, and they're also being more detailed about where the information is coming from. Okay, it's not just listing the organization, it's listing the actual papers and studies. So if you wanted to actually search for these using something like PubMed, which is something freely available through the government, okay, you could search these actual papers to get more information. All right, so coverage, currency, and then, like we said, objectivity. Okay, we don't have a lot of links here, or a lot of ads here, which is nice. Not distracting, much cleaner, much more focused. Now, where we do have ads, they do have right underneath a little advertising policy, so they're putting it right out there for you. Again, transparency is good. Mayo Clinic does not endorse companies or products. Advertising revenue supports our not-for-profit mission. So that means any revenue they get from people clicking on these ads, they're putting right back into disseminating this information to you. All right, they're basically just using it in order to keep their website going and keep enhancing their website. They're not making a profit. They're not putting it in their own pockets. Okay, so that's why I say sometimes with .orgs you'll still see ads. They'll be more limited, but you might still see some, but they're most likely supporting a not-for-profit mission. They're not just the website's not just making a profit off them. All right, so with the case of Mayo Clinic, they do have an About page, of course. If I scroll down to the bottom, all the way down, as far as you can go, you'll see About Mayo Clinic and About this site. We're looking at not so much the organization in this case, but the site. So let's click on About this site. And we see something similar to WebMD, all right, who we are, accreditations and awards, meet our medical editors. If we want to learn more about the people who write and review this, we could click on this, and here they are. Again, with links to their individual profiles. We have a lot of specialists, as you can see. All right. And it looks like this list was last updated February 3rd of this year. If I scroll back up, actually, let me click the back button to go back one page. Again, we have policies, advertising and sponsorship policy, which we just kind of looked at before underneath that one ad. Corrections policy in case they need to correct something. All this content development, okay, who are the other editors kind of assembling this information, putting it on the website. So Mayo Clinic is very transparent about who they are, how they're putting the information together, how they're using their advertising. Okay, so they have a very nice comprehensive About page, a very good sign that this website is trustworthy, reliable. So as you saw, WebMD versus this, again, WebMD was, generally speaking, they are a good site, okay, and like I said, they are fact check. Okay, they're a .com, so they're kind of under a little more scrutiny in terms of fact checking, but they are fact checked by other objective organizations. Okay, so the information is reliable, but in terms of distractions, I think that Mayo Clinic just wins in this case. All right, it's a little more focused. And it seems to be maybe a bit more comprehensive, as we saw with their references page. So If you have any questions on those criteria, just let me know. We're going to move on to kind of just talking about the browser itself again. All right, because we're still keeping with this theme of purposeful research, and we're going to talk about ways to better keep track of our research in case we want to refer to it later, or if we want to look at multiple websites at the same time, all these kinds of things to help us manage our research when we're in a browsing session. So I'm going to click the back button again a few times to go back to the results page for now. All right, so we're back on the ear infections results page. In fact, instead of running a new search, let's just stick with what we have here. I think this is fine. Okay, we kind of practice searching on Internet 1, so let's just stick with our results page here. So now we're kind of invested in this. Okay, we want to keep researching ear infection symptoms. I want to keep track of things a little bit better. So first, let's talk about how we can kind of multitask better when we are researching in the web browser like this. So let's say I want to compare a few websites, compare or contrast, or maybe I want to just save a bunch of websites or web pages, I should say, to my browser. So we'll use Mayo Clinic. We could start with them. So I'm actually going to click on the Mayo Clinic link again. Okay, and I'm doing that on purpose. So I'm going to click on it, and you'll notice that what happens is if you look up there in your tabs, it's using the same tab as the results page from Google. That's why we have to keep clicking the back button several times to get back to our results, because it's in the same tab. So I might want to keep my results in plain sight, but also review the Mayo Clinic webpage at the same time. So to do that, I'm going to open it as a separate tab instead. So let's click the back button again, go back to the results page. Okay, and when you're using a PC, remember, when you use a PC, no matter what program you're using, a right click brings up a contextual menu. They call it a contextual menu because the menu options change depending on what you're clicking. Okay, so if I right click on that link instead of a left click, go ahead and right click it. All right, think of contextual menus as a way to customize your experience in terms of layout and access, something we talked about in Windows Essentials yesterday. So we have this menu here, and you will see at the very top, open link in new tab. Go ahead and click on it, and you'll notice that instead of opening in the same tab, you've just opened a second tab. I can click on it right now to go to that ear infection page on the Mayo Clinic site. And the results page is still available in this tab on the left. So I can just go back and forth as needed. Okay, now I'm going to scroll down and go to another one. Okay, here we have Hopkinsmedicine.org, obviously a renowned medical institution, so definitely good information here. So once again, this one that says middle ear infection in adults. Okay, if I'm concerned with adults especially, this might work. So I'm going to right click on this one, but this time I'm going to click on open link in new window. I just want to show you the difference. Okay, if you do in new window, it's going to open up a brand new browser window. Notice there's only one tab. If you bring your mouse pointer down to your Windows 10 taskbar, point at the Edge icon, you'll see you have two separate windows open in Edge. The one on the left is the results page and the Mayo Clinic site, two tabs. The one on the right is a separate window with just the Johns Hopkins page. Okay, so you can divide your various web pages into different windows if you want, or you can separate them into, or you can divide them into tabs, or a combination of both. Now, a little trick here is that if you change your mind, if you go up to that tab, okay, so we're on the Johns Hopkins site. If you go up to that tab, click, hold, and drag down okay, and then kind of bring it up next to the other two tabs behind it, you can place it into that window as a new tab. Okay, so you can always move things back and forth. Likewise, if I want to put it back to its own window, I just click and drag out of this window and then just let go, and now it's its own window again. So you could just use click and drag to move to kind of separate tabs into window or convert tabs to windows and vice versa. All right, but I put it back as a tab because I prefer having everything in one window separated by tabs. So that's what we have here. In fact, if you don't have that, I would advise you do that now so we have everything in one place, because I'm going to show you another little trick that allows us to save everything as a group. All right, I'll do one more. I'm going to go back to the ear infection symptoms results page by clicking on that tab. I'll use right underneath this cdc.gov. Okay, another .gov is a good domain, okay, government agency, so I can be pretty confident that the information, or I can really be just totally confident that the information on this page is going to be accurate. All right, it is a little specific. It says antibiotic use. It has something to do with the way Google returned that result, but let's just pretend that we want to save this, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and right click it, and this time I'll just select open link in a new tab, and now I have 4 tabs in this one window. Okay, the results page, and then Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, CDC on the right. Again, Mayo Clinic, CDC went here, and then Johns Hopkins all the way to the right. And by the way, you can click and drag in your tabs and reorder the sequence if you want to. Let me just see if I missed anything. You may have seen open link a new private window. We'll talk about private sessions in just a few minutes. Okay. You could also copy the link, and in case you want to paste it into an email to somebody, something like that. You could also save the link, okay, as an HTML document in your computer. So, for example, from your desktop, you could just double click and go right to this page. Okay, you can also share from here, add to collections, which we reviewed in Internet 1. Okay, web capture. We'll cover a couple of these things as we go through, okay, because they're available also in your more options menu here. So now I want to take this a step further. I want to save these 3 tabs as a group, okay? Remember that favorites list we looked at Internet 1. We can, when you save something to favorites, you can also save several pages at the same time as a favorite. So you can save it as a group, which just expedites the process. Also makes more sense if you're trying to keep related pieces of information together, may as well do them as a group. So if you right click on your tabs now, remember the right click brings up a contextual menu, you'll get a set of options that allow you to manage these tabs in other ways. Okay. So if you right click on any of these tabs, you'll see down toward the bottom, add all tabs to favorites. You'll also see add all tabs to collections. We'll do both. Now, before we do this though, it's saying all tabs, which means first I need to close that Google results tab. So it's not saving that as well. I mean, you could save it as part of the group if you wanted, but maybe I don't want to, so I'm going to close it. I could either close it, or maybe I could separate it into a different window so it doesn't grab that tab. Either one would work. For now, I'm just going to close it. So I'm going to click on the X in the results tab and get it out of my way. Now I'm going to right click on any of the remaining tabs, go down, click on add all tabs to favorites. Okay, and this part can be kind of tricky. All right, be careful of the folder it's starting with. Notice how it says MCLS. I'm going to first click on favorites bar because I want this to be a separate subfolder in my favorites bar. I don't want it to be inside of the MCLS folder. So it's in my favorites bar. Now, and this trips me up as well. Let me just make sure I'm doing this part right. Where it says name, new folder. Let me call this ear infections. And let me see how this saves it. Okay, it did it properly. Just making sure I was doing it the right way because it's confused me before. So I will review that one more time. Let me just remove it and do it again. Okay, so I right click on a tab, I go down to add all tabs to favorites. I make sure I'm putting it in the main formula favorites bar. I do that by clicking on favorites bar, making sure it's selected. And then where it says new folder here, I'm going to erase that. I'll call it ear infection symptoms. And then I'll click save. So now when I go back to my favorites list by clicking on the star with the 3 lines up here in the toolbar, I see a new folder called ear infection symptoms, and all 3 are there. All right, and remember, if you ever want to delete anything from your favorites list, the easiest way to do it is just to use your right click. You can delete an individual page by right clicking it and selecting delete. You can delete an entire folder by right clicking on it and selecting delete, and that would delete all the pages inside the folder at the same time. Okay, and also I want to remind you too that when you have several pages in one folder, if you right click on the folder, you can open them all, reopen them all at the same time. Notice how it says open all 3. Okay, you can open them all in one shot. Okay, just remember that right click when you're, especially when you're using a PC. Okay, when you want to kind of manage, customize things a little bit, the right click is usually your go-to, fastest way to do that. So now when I click outside that favorites list, it's just going to close it because it is what's called a flyout menu, which means it's just going to hide the second I click outside of it, which is fine. Now, a little trick here, if you ever close a tab and you do it and you did so accidentally, you want to reopen that the last tab you closed. If you right click on any of the current tabs, which I'll do right now, you'll see reopen close tab. By clicking on that, I'll get my results page back. So if you ever close a tab by accident, another thing you can do by right clicking on a tab is reopen a closed tab. Is this just looking at something very quickly. Okay. All right. Now, if you want to review collections as well, we can do that. When you right click on a tab, you also get all tabs to collections. Okay. So again, in this case, I'll close the Google results first, so it's not part of the group. I'll right click on a tab. I'll select add all tabs to collections. In this case, I'm going to start a new one because I want to start kind of like we did with that favorites folder. All right. Now, when you click on new collection, it's just going to add it, and the name of that collection is just going to be the date. So to manage that, we'll go up to our toolbar, click on the collections icon, which is the one to the right of the star with the 3 lines. And there it is, March 10th, 2022. Okay. If I right click on that collection, I can go to edit collection, and up here I can rename it, again, ear infection symptoms. And remember, collections, they allow you to save not only web pages, but also pictures from web pages and selected portions of text. Okay, if you want to use the click and drag method to bring things in, remember you just have to make sure you pin the collections menu here to your page, or to your browser, I should say, using the pin icon at the top right here. So it stays there. Otherwise, when you click outside of it, it's just going to close. Otherwise, you can always use your right click. So if I right click on an image, I can go to add to collections, select the collection from the list, and it will add that picture. Likewise, I could select a portion of text, like this overview. Try not to get the picture. Even if I do, it's okay. I can right click, add to collections, again, select the collection of choice. Okay, so as you can see, we're kind of keeping better track of our research, all right? So we can save it and easily access it later, and it's all logically organized. So let's talk about a few more things that kind of allow us to keep track of our search history and our general research. So aside from managing the actual browsing session like we've been doing using our tabs and windows and our favorites and collections, all right, let's look at a few other tools that are in the more options drop down on the right. So up there, remember all the way to the right of your toolbars, the three dots, let's click on that and review some of these options. We kind of glossed over them in Internet 1. We'll kind of look at some of these in more depth right now. Okay, now I'm going to circle back to some of these options here. Okay, again, favorites, collections, history, downloads, these kind of keep track of your history, generally speaking. They kind of all do the same thing. They allow you to save your search, track your search, okay, where you've been, however far back, track your downloads. All right, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Let's go down to this section first. This is a bit simpler. So I like to think of these as tools, starting with print here, kind of tools that allow you to, again, almost like an alternative to saving things to your browser, other ways you can keep track of your search history and interesting web pages, interesting articles. So first of all, there's print. You could, of course, print from your browser. If you want to try, go ahead and click it. You don't, we're not actually going to print, but I'll just show you what the options look like. All right, so when you print from your browser, remember, it's going to, as a default, print the entire web page, which sometimes means possibly hundreds of pages, which usually we don't want to do that, okay? But so what we often want to do from when we print from a web page is print out a specific part of that web page. All right, so let's just say I want to print out this portion on symptoms in children especially. I can select it using the Edge print tool. Okay, it's a little bit, it's kind of, you have to kind of dig down, but if you scroll down here on the left and click on more settings, okay, and scroll down again, you will see selection only. And now it only prints out that part of the web page, as you can see. And it's only one page now. So like, so again, it's just keep that in mind. You kind of have to drill down for that. Just click on more settings, scroll down again, and you'll see selection only down here. Okay. And as a default, it's not going to print out background graphics if the web page has stuff built into the background. It does that, of course, to save on ink. All right. But if you want the background graphics, you can turn that on. Now I'm just going to click cancel to close that dialog box and go back to the more options here. All right, another option, another thing you could use, again, to save information is web capture. All right, essentially a screenshot. You can capture a specific area, or you can click on capture full page and it will just save the entire page as a screenshot. Okay, so this is the whole page, but saved essentially as a scrollable image. And I can go up here, I can draw on it if I want to mark it up. Okay, maybe say like this is, you know, this is really important. I can erase any drawings using erase here, and then I could save that image to my computer, okay, with the markup if I want to. I can also add it to the collections. Okay, so if you want to save a picture of the web page but with markup on it, you can save it to your collections and to your computer using save. You can even copy it and share it with others in your contacts. Okay, and if you do, let me just close that. If you do capture area, like I said, you can target your screenshot like this with a click and drag. For some reason, they don't, I can't quite figure this out. You can copy it. You can't save a targeted screenshot directly from this, but if you go to markup capture, you can save from here. I'm not sure why they make you take that extra step, but that's just how they do it. Okay, now back to the more options. If you click share, You can share this page with other people. You can kind of log into one of your social media accounts and share it with others that you have in your friends list or contacts list. If you have a Gmail, for example, or whatever email is linked to your mail app in Windows, it will open that up for you. So you can share it as an email, or you could just use the copy link tool here to copy it as an open link and then just send it to whomever, however you want. All right, now we also have find on page. Okay, find on page is very helpful if you're looking, if you want to see if you want to see if a specific piece of information or a specific resource, something like that, is available on that page or is mentioned on that page. You don't want to have to read the entire article to see if it's mentioned, because it might not be. So you can target keywords on a page to make sure it's there. And if it's not there, then you can move on to another result, right? To keep searching for that specific piece of information. So find just allows you to sift through large amounts of text and look for something specific without having to read the entire thing. So I just clicked on find. You'll see at the top we have that find search bar. So let's just say the symptom I'm looking for is linked to, it looks like the person I'm looking at, they've lost their balance. Is that something related? So I'm going to type in balance. Okay, and if that shows up on this page, it will show up and it will tell you how many times it shows up. Notice it says 1 of 5 here, and it will show you where. So it's highlighted here. If I click the down arrow in that same search bar, it shows you the next instance. There's loss of balance on the right side. We have an article. Mayo click on hearing imbalance. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not an article. It looks like that's some kind of a book or something else, some other publication that I can get from their store. All right, so every instance of that word will be indicated on the page. Okay, another example I always like to show, I'm going to do this real quick. On our library website. So if I go to something like resources, I'm looking for a database, okay, one of our online databases. And I want to know if you have any databases that deal with stocks, okay? So I'm thinking, all right, they'd probably be under business and finance. Let me start there. So these are all of our databases under the subject of business and finance. Now, rather than having to scroll through all these results and read every description to see if any of them deal with stocks, I can just do a find on page, excuse me. I'll type in stock, and there it is. There's one there. So that database talks about stocks, and here's another one. And here's another one, okay? So just a good way to sift through large amounts of information to look for something specific. And if it's not there, then you know you can move on and try another website. All right, also in that section, we have read aloud. This will actually read the page to you. Okay, it's basically there for accessibility reasons. Okay, if you want the page to be read to you, it will actually read it aloud to you, line by line. Now, it doesn't always work too well with all pages, of course, because if it's not an article, it's going to be a little bit disjointed, but it will actually go down and just read it line by line. And you could change the language in which it's read. Okay, it's very easy to use. All right, under more tools, really not too much to worry about here, not things that are used too often. You could save the page as, again, kind of like what we looked at before with the tabs, you could save the page as an HTML document and then just reopen it directly from your desktop instead of having to open up the browser first. Okay, another one I like to point out from here, pin to taskbar, pin to start. All right, if this specific page, if you come back to it a lot, you can actually pin it to your Windows taskbar or to your start menu. So if I click pin to taskbar, notice the icon down there. Excuse me. It's actually the MCLS logo. So I'll close this If I click on it, it's going to reopen directly. Give it a second. It's being a little bit slow, sorry. Directly to that page. So you can actually save it outside of your browser as an app, or not an app, an icon pinned to your taskbar, or an icon pinned to your start menu here in the tile area. If you want to unpin, good question. Just again, remember when we want to customize layout and access, what do? We consult our right click. So if I right click on that icon, you'll see unpin from taskbar. Same thing with the start menu. If you want to unpin, right click on one of those tiles and select unpin from start. Again, that was under the more options, under more tools. There we go. So that was actually a good instance of refreshing. When I unpinned it, it still wasn't pinned to taskbar, was disabled because it still thought it was pinned there. So when I refreshed the page, this option came back. All right. Now, so we've covered those things. They're pretty simple. Again, just good kind of alternatives. If you don't want to just only use the favorites or collections here in the browser to save things, save pages or pieces of text, you could use these other tools to as alternatives to that. You could print it out. You could save it as a screenshot. Okay. You also have your find on page, which allows you to sift through it and look for something specific. Okay. Now, another thing I want to look at, a couple more things, is up at the top, you'll see I can open a new tab, like a blank tab to go to a new website. I can open up a new window in my browser. I can also open a new in private window. I'm going to click on new in private window right now. All right, all browsers have this feature, not just Edge. All right, you can do private browsing. Sometimes they call it something different, like Chrome calls it incognito. Here in Edge, they call it in private. Okay, it's pretty simple. When you are browsing privately, it deletes your browsing info when you close all the in private windows. So your search history is automatically saved. All the websites you visited yesterday, the day before, last week, really going back as far as you started using your browser, all right, it's all saved. But when you do it in private, all the history is wiped out automatically. It's not tracked, which can be helpful. First of all, if you're in a public setting, of course, and let's say you're at the library, you're at a cafe, and you're on your bank account, okay? Or what I should say is you're on a public computer and then you're on your bank account, something private. Open it in an in private window or in private tab, and then when you close it, nothing will be saved. Okay, nothing you entered, the site you visited, and everything's wiped out. Okay, it's also good. I always like to mention this too for shopping. Okay, if you're shopping for gifts for somebody, if you have other people in your household that are using the same computer, let's say you all have a shared Target account or Amazon, whatever, you don't want them to be able to log on to that and see what you were looking at because that's going to be in your history. Okay, so if you do your shopping in private, they will not be able to see any sites you visited in order to do that shopping. Okay, now there are some things it won't do. It does actually list them here. Okay, so if your browsing history is still accessible to other organizations, so if there's sort of administrative controls on your computer, somebody else is kind of overseeing your use of the computer, maybe at work or something, they could still get access to that history. All right. So again, just a good thing to use if you want to keep things private because your history will not be tracked. Okay, and when you do searches, they won't be associated with you, which is something we typically see with cookies. All right, it won't track who you are because it's protected through the privacy control. Now, speaking of cookies, let's talk about history more generally. So I'm going to leave this private window by just closing it in the top right corner here with the X. and I'll go back to my normal browsing session. I'm going to go back to the three dots again. All right, let's go down to history here and click on it. So your history, as you can see, it's going to give you a list of all the individual web pages you've visited, and they're not only time-stamped here. Yes, I got a question here in the virtual chat. Yes, you could use the private window on a public computer in the library. That's what I was saying before. When you log onto it, when you access a browser, okay, at the library, let's say, that browser will have a private, it will have an in private function. Like I said, it might be called something different, but it will have that tool you could use, and then you could do any website searching you're doing, any web searching, excuse me, could be done in private. So it's nothing's tracked. Okay, so let me go back to history here. So each page I visited is timestamped on the right, and they're also grouped by, we see recent at the top. Under here, we see today. So kind of, I guess it's going by maybe the last hour or so. So whatever's in the last hour is considered recent. Anything before that is just under today. And then we have yesterday, I have Tuesday. All right. And let me just scroll back to January 3rd. That's probably the last time I cleared out my history. That's why it's going back that far, but it will go further if you haven't cleared out your history. So now you don't have to clear out your history, but you can. Okay, again, just in case you don't want other people to see where you've been. So if you want to clear out just a specific page, that's very simple. Again, when we want to customize layout, access, things like that, we right click. So if I right click on a specific page here, you will see the delete option, and it will delete it from my history. You can also just click on the X that shows up next to that selection, and that will delete it as well. All right. And if you want to look at your browsing history from other devices that are synced to your account, you can actually go to tabs from other devices. But most importantly, what I want to show you is if we go up here and click on this menu, here's the three dots again, but in the actual history dropdown, click on Open History Page from that menu. And what it does is it opens up your Edge settings again, like we saw with our Start and Home pages, but it goes directly to the history settings. So we're in a new tab in our browser now. So here's that same list, okay? All right, so first of all, if I'm looking at web pages specifically that I want to delete from my history, all right, I can kind of do things a bit faster. You'll see the selection boxes on the left. All right, knowing what we know about PCs, we talked about this in Windows classes. When you hold down your control key and click at the same time, it allows you to select multiple items as a batch. Okay. And actually, in this case, do I need to use, no, I'm sorry. In this case, I don't actually need to use the control key. I can make multiple selections. Okay. But if I want to expedite things, remember, you could also use the shift key. So for example, if I wanted to delete everything from the recent category, I would click on the first item, hold down shift, select the last item in the range, and it will automatically select everything in between. And then I can go up here, click delete, and delete all those pages from my recent history. So I could delete things as a batch like this, a bit more quickly than I would be able to in the initial menu, where we had to do things individually. But we could take this a few steps further. On the left side, under history, I can go to yesterday, delete everything from yesterday. I can go to older, delete everything from older. Click on the first item, hold down shift, scroll down. Oh, I'm sorry, scroll down, hold down shift, click on the last item, and it will select everything in older. Press delete, it deletes everything in that category. Okay. Now, again, we're still taking this a few steps further. So we've looked at these sections on the left under history. You'll also notice something up here called clear browsing data. So there are other things that are kind of tracked in addition to your web pages. So let's click on clear browsing data and look and see what I'm talking about. Again, we're taken to another page in our Edge settings. Okay, and we get this pop-up that says clear browsing data. So these are the different things that are kind of tracked by our browser, which we can also delete if we want. We have browsing history, download history, cookies and other site data, and cached images and files. So if you want to delete your entire browsing history, instead of having to do things by recent, yesterday, etc., you could just leave that as your only box that's checked off and click clear now, and that will clear out your entire browsing history from today through whenever, to when you first started accumulating that history. Okay, now you can also delete download history. So remember, as I told you in Internet 1, whenever you download something through your browser, it will be traced through a download history, which you can access in your More Options menu. If you go to Downloads here under History, you can see everything that was downloaded through your browser. So if you download a file, if you download a program, okay, you'll see that in your download history. You can delete that as well if you want. All right, cookies. If you're not familiar with cookies, when you visit websites, all right, those sites typically will, they actually essentially download little tiny files onto your computer, okay? Once upon a time, people panicked about these, okay, but they're not harmful, all right? They're there to kind of, to personalize the experience for you. And typically, if you want full functionality for a website, you're going to have cookies enabled anyway. So you want to definitely keep them on. There is a way to disable them, to block cookies entirely, but generally you want to just leave them on anyway. But if you occasionally want to delete them, you can. I could just isolate cookies and other data, and then click clear now. All right. After a while they get deleted automatically anyway. But if you want to just occasionally delete them yourself, you can do so here. Again, they just personalize the experience. If, for example, you go to a website, you may have seen this before, you look at a particular pair of shoes. All right, now you close the website. You didn't buy them, you closed the website. Tomorrow you log on to Facebook. All of a sudden there's an ad on the right featuring those same exact shoes from that same exact store you looked at yesterday. That's because of the cookies on your computer, okay? The website is kind of looking at who you are and tailoring the ads to you specifically, okay? Again, they're not harmful, they just personalize your experience. There are benefits and sometimes to that, and sometimes it could be distracting as well. So if you want to clear them out occasionally, this is how you can do it yourself. All right, last but not least, cached images and files, okay? Something else that a website does when you browse it automatically. But this doesn't have to do with you as the user, this has to do with website performance. If there's a website that you, or a web page that you visit frequently, okay, by essentially putting these cached images and files on your computer, it enhances their performance so that next time you visit it, it's going to load faster, okay? So that's what happens. The first time you visit that page, it might take a little bit, a little bit of time to load, but every subsequent time you log on to that page, it loads faster. That's because of the cache, okay, C-A-C-H-E. All right, so, but sometimes what happens is after a while, okay, the next, we visited that site several times, now we visited it again, now it's starting to look a little bit weird, okay? Things aren't quite, the screen isn't quite right, the layout's a little bit off, okay? That's probably because of your cache, okay? So occasionally it's a good idea to clear out your cache to kind of clean everything up. So again, if you want to do that, you can just do it directly through your browser here by checking off only cached images and files and clicking clear now. And it will clear all of them from your computer. Okay, they're stored in your computer, but it will clear them out from your computer. And if you want to, of course, you can clear everything by just checking off all the boxes and clicking clear now. Oh, I forgot to mention this, the time range. Okay, you do have to specify last hour, last 24 hours, or all time. All right, if you want to clear everything entirely, make sure it's all time and check off all 4 boxes. Or you can just target exactly what it is you want to clear out. Again, cookies and your cache, they're not harmful. Cookies will personalize the experience on a website. Cache images and files will enhance the performance. Okay, but like I said, sometimes it's it actually starts to be sort of hinder the performance of the site a little bit. So you want to just clear out your cache if that's the case. All right, now last but not least, I just want to quickly show you Chrome and Firefox. And I just want to, essentially what I want to show you is that they're set up very much the same way and have many of the same tools. So if you can master Edge, you can really master all three of those browsers. So I'm going to just minimize this window here for now. I'm going to go down to my taskbar. I'm going to start with Google Chrome and click on it. For those of you here in person, you do have an access point to Google Chrome. For those of you attending virtually, if you have Google Chrome, you can go ahead and open it. Otherwise, you could just watch. All right, mine's just taking a second to load here. Sorry, come on, Chrome, go faster. Let me try Firefox. This is still Edge. I'm just waiting for these to load. Okay, Chrome's loading finally. Sorry about that. And again, those of you who are in person, you have Firefox down there as well. You can open both now if you want, or just do one and then the other. It's up to you. All right, so here we are. I'm in Chrome. It's just finishing up loading the start page. And just like Edge, on my computer, my Chrome browser is set to the library website as its start page. Okay, so here we are in Chrome, and it looks and operates very much the same way. All right, the toolbar is very much the same. We have our address or URL bar kind of in the middle. To the left, we have our back button and forward button. They're disabled right now because I haven't gone to any other pages, so that's okay. At this point, we understand how they operate. Back button, forward button. We have a refresh button here, or in this case, they're calling it reload. And we have a home button, okay, which I can set to a home page. Over to the right, in the actual URL bar itself, we do have a share tool, like we do in Edge, to share this page. And we have a bookmark or favorites tool. Okay, in Chrome here, instead of favorites, they call them bookmarks. If I want to add this to my bookmarks, I click on the star, just like we do in Edge, and it adds it to the list. If I want to get to the bookmarks, to the right, there's an icon there. Actually, no, it's not added. Let me add it, sorry. If I can. Oops. Is it here? No, it's not here. I could show the Bookmarks Manager. Show Bookmarks Bar. No, I don't want that. Nope. Yeah, I think with Chrome here, I just have to go to get to the bookmarks, we have to consult the more options on the right, which we'll come to in a second. Now, I have a couple of things here that are extra. Don't worry about those. These are what are called extensions. Okay, I believe I touched on this in Internet 1. You can add extensions to your browser. They're kind of like extra things you can download and add to your browser for other functionality. So I have something called a library extension, which allows me to search for books in other libraries, essentially, and a Zotero connector. Okay, here's your profile icon. So just like Edge, in the case of Chrome here, you would sign into your Google account instead of your Microsoft account. And if you have other devices that are using Google Chrome, you could sign those into the same account and then sync them together, just like we can in Edge. Okay, and last but not least, we have another meatball menu. Instead of 3 horizontal dots, it's 3 vertical dots. But it will give you more options. And I get some similar ones: new tab, new window, new incognito window. Remember, it's the same thing as in private in Edge. Chrome just calls it incognito. Okay, I can get to my history and manage my history much the same way I can in Edge. Click on history on the left here to get to the entire history. We have selection boxes to delete things as a batch. I can also go to clear browsing data on the left. Okay, because remember, this all looks very familiar. Why? Like I said in Internet 1, I'm going to close these tabs and go back to just the homepage or the library site. As I said in Internet 1, the newest version of Microsoft Edge is, you might see it called Chromium. That's because it's based on the same foundation as Google Chrome. So especially Chrome and Edge, they look very similar and operate very much the same way. Okay, we can get to our download history. Here's how we can get to all of our bookmarks. We can point at bookmarks, and at the top, go to Bookmark Manager to get to all of your bookmarks. Just see, no. Okay, and if you want to add the Bookmarks bar to the top of your screen, you can click on Show Bookmarks Bar, and it will show you the bookmarks that are saved to your main bar like this. And then I can go ahead and remove it again. Turn that back off. Okay, we can also print from Chrome just like we can with Edge. We can cast to other devices, which we have nothing connected right now, but it would basically just show the same screen on another device. All right, Edge has the same thing. We have find on page. In this case, it's just called find. Same thing, same way it works on Edge. Open it up, type in your keywords, and it finds instances of those keywords on the page. Okay, if we go to more tools, we find some similar things. Save page as, we saw that before. Okay. Notice there's no pin to taskbar or start menu. That's because Edge is a Microsoft product, so it kind of works in tandem with Windows, whereas Chrome and Firefox are not Microsoft products, so you don't get that same function. But pretty much everything else is here. Okay, and there's also an access point to main Google Chrome settings, which looks very similar to the settings in Edge. The same layout and many of the same options. And if you're your Chrome user and you want to set up a start page and home page, okay, for our start page on the left side, you'll click on Startup. And just like Edge, you want to make sure it's set to open a specific page. Type that URL in, press enter, and it will be saved as your start page. And you can add more start pages just like you can in Edge. All right, to set a home page, I believe this is under Appearance. Yes. In Google Chrome, to add a home page, go to Appearance. Make sure your home button's turned on just like in Edge, and then set that home page here. All right, so let me close this and let me just go to Firefox and we'll look at similar things real quick. And somehow Firefox, I think this may have gotten an update of some kind. That's why it's not going to the library website anymore. I have to change that. I will do that after this class, but let's just pretend it comes to this start page. Here we go. So now I'm in Firefox, which is another browser you can download freely. Okay. Again, looks very much the same way, has a lot of the same tools. We have a URL bar here in the middle where we type in our web address. Okay, I don't see share, which is most likely just in the main menu. Does it have a share tool? It may not because of the fact that it's not really linked to any other apps like Google and Microsoft Edge are. But that's okay. On the left, we have a back button, a forward button, a refresh or reload in this case, and a home button to get back to our home page. To the right of the URL bar, in the URL bar, there's a star where I can save this as a bookmark. Okay, Firefox calls them bookmarks like Chrome does. And if I keep going to the right, instead of 3 dots, we have 3 lines, or it's often called a hamburger menu. Okay, so when you see 3 lines like this or 3 dots, again, those are kind of universal icons for more options. So if we click on this, we will get many of the same options. Actually, yes, you can create a Firefox account, much like you can with Google or Microsoft. So if you have one, okay, you could do that to sync your devices. So if I click on sync and save data, I can sync any devices I have that use Firefox, I can sync them all together, provided they're all signed into the same Firefox account. We have similar options here for viewing for our browser session, new tab, new window, new private window. All right, bookmarks, I can consult whatever bookmarks I have saved. And if I want to show the Bookmarks Toolbar up there like we did with Chrome, I could just click on Show Bookmarks Toolbar. And if you want to manage all of your bookmarks, in this case, you would just go down to where it says Manage Bookmarks and manage them in a separate screen. All right, creating folders, deleting them, etc. All right, we have history here under more options where we can manage our history. I can go down to manage history to get to kind of everything. All right, all of my browsing history is there. Download history. This actually has a separate entry for passwords that are saved. Edge and Chrome have the same thing. They're just in their settings screen, not in the initial more options menu. Okay, I can print from Firefox. I can save this page as an HTML document, so I can access it directly from my desktop or my computer. I can find something on a page just like we can in Edge and Chrome. We have a zoom feature just like we do with those, and here's the main settings for all the other stuff. Just like Edge and Chrome, it opens up in a separate tab and has a similar style menu with main categories on the left, and then my sections or sort of settings on the right. All right, and if you go to the home category on the left, you can set up a home page here. Choose what you see when you open your home page, new windows, and new tabs. So home page and new windows, I'll set that back to what it used to be, www.mcl.org, and just kind of click outside of that, or just press enter. And if I want my new tabs that I create to be specific pages, I can set those as well. Now, what's interesting is that Firefox treats start pages and home pages as the same thing. It's one little difference. So like Edge and Chrome, in those browsers, we have a start page and a home page, 2 different things. Here in Firefox, they're one and the same. So this is the first page I'll see when I launch Firefox. And if I click on the home button, it will also take me to the same page. All right, so at this point, for those of you attending virtually, if you have any further questions about what we covered today, now would be a good time to direct them to the GoToMeeting chat. All right. Otherwise, I'll go through a few closing remarks and then we'll be all set for the day here. So thank you for coming to Internet 2 today. Be sure to replay this recording on our library YouTube channel. Okay, remember to get there, go to our website at mcl.org. In the upper left-hand corner, click on the YouTube icon and that will take you to our YouTube channel. From there, select playlists, and then go to the computer instruction playlist. All right, and as I mentioned, we do have a handout for this class in addition to most of our other classes. To get to those handouts, just go to our website, mcl.org, click on Services from the main menu, and then select Technology Instruction. Once you're on the Technology Instruction page, just scroll down a bit and you'll see all the handouts listed by the name of the class. And remember, you could always sign up for more classes yourself by going to our website. Either go to the main events calendar from the events menu on the homepage, or go to services, go to technology instruction, and you could do so. And you could also get to the computer class calendar from there. Okay, either way works pretty much the same. So you can self-register, and remember, if you want to retake any classes next month, you're welcome to retake classes as often as needed. And we are offering those virtual private sessions this month on select Fridays between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So if you think you'd benefit from a private session where we work with just you on a computer project you might need some help with, by all means, please sign up. Again, they're on select Fridays between 10 and 2, and they are virtual only. We will send you a link the day before, and we will meet you on GoToMeeting. To find those private sessions, just look at the same computer class calendar, click on the link for private sessions, and then follow the instructions to book your appointment. If you have any other questions about our technology instruction program, you can always send us an email to techclass@mcl.org. At this time, if there are no further questions from my virtual students, you can go ahead and click on the X in the upper right-hand corner of the GoToMeeting window and then select Leave Meeting. If you are leaving us, thank you so much for coming today, and we hope to see you again in class very soon. Take care.